Welcome back to the Great Compromise podcast. I'm GOP Jim, and with me is Victoria the Democrat.
Happy to be here.
Me too. We are celebrating today. Clearly this is a celebration. We've done 10 episodes, and today we're doing a Q&A episode. We are answering your questions. It's going to be a fun one. Let's just get right into it. Our first question: how do we feel about freedom of speech versus tech companies who are allowed to ban you off their platform for any reason they want? This is a good question, and immediately what comes to mind for me is Trump getting banned off of Twitter. And it's interesting. Obviously I believe in freedom of speech, right? But that is a private company's right. When you sign up, you accept the terms and conditions, right? We've all done it. You say that you can't say certain things. You can't incite violence. Among whatever other things may get you banned off of Twitter. So I don't think it's necessarily these companies overstepping their bounds. I think they do have some responsibility of what is being said on their platform. I wouldn't allow terrorists to use Twitter. I know they do currently, but that's just me personally. So, there is a limit. You know what I mean? What do you think, Victoria?
I agree. I think that freedom of speech is really important, but Twitter and other social media platforms are a business just like anything else. So they have their right to deny service, just like a restaurant has the right to deny service to somebody who walks in. It's not the only way to get your voice heard. So just because you've been kicked off Twitter doesn't mean you don't have plenty of other options of making your voice and your opinion heard. So I don't find a problem with it. I think that it's good to try to have some expectations of operation. People that are participating need to be held to a certain standard.
Perfect. Our next question: what are your go-to sources for news, and how do you compensate for media bias as opposed to just supporting your worldviews? That's a good one. It's hard to find any media source that isn't incredibly biased, especially now. I do use Fox News. I know that's controversial, but of course I also spend just as much, if not more, time on Reddit and Twitter. And for anyone who is not familiar with those are a leftist echo chamber is the nice way to put it. So I get both, and I try not to stay in a conservative echo chamber myself. I don't think that's healthy. I think it is important to get both sides on an issue if possible. What about you, V?
I go through cycles of reading a ton of news and reading no news. So right now I'm taking a break from the news. I think there's enough other stuff going on. I don't need to take a break from just the overwhelm of the news. But when I am reading a lot of news, I agree, I try to stay out of those super opinionated echo chambers where there's just so much bias. I don't think echo chambers are healthy, and they can be pretty dangerous actually. So I like to discuss these things with people I know that are going to disagree with me. So if I read a story and I think I believe one way, I'll talk to somebody who I know is going to be kind of oppositional, because I want to open up my mind to their other perspectives and learn and completely understand all sides of it. So that's kind of my tendency.
I wonder who that oppositional person is that you talk to.
I don't know who it could be.
Could be anybody, really. Moving right along, our next question: when are you guys going to talk about Trump? Well,
great question.
Yes. It's a little more loaded than you may have expected. I think a lot of people are sick of hearing about Trump. And everyone else is sick of talking about Trump. And so we're trying to move on. Would you say that's accurate, Victoria?
Please, let's move on.
Yeah, it's very possible he may come up. I'm not saying we're never going to do an episode on Trump, but we're over it for now.
I need a break.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Next, what are your opinions or views on the January 6th, and this question says terrorist attack, so I can see how this person feels about what happened that day.
A couple clues.
Yeah, yes. Personally, I wouldn't call it a terrorist attack. I think 90% of the people who walked into the public Capitol building that day were just caught up in the crowd. I don't think they were all criminals. If you look at the pictures, a lot of them are just confused old folks wandering in with everybody else. Now, 10% of that crowd, I do agree, were in there for some sort of malicious intent, and that is clear. And the FBI is on it, and they've arrested a number of people, and there's probably more to be arrested. But I wouldn't say every person there was there for malicious reasons. I think a lot of people just got caught up in a bad situation, frankly.
That's an embarrassing line to be caught standing in for. You know how people just join lines like, what's this for? I don't know. Let's just wait and see. And then all of a sudden you're in the Capitol attack. I think it was really awful that it happened, and incredibly shocking to be reading about that in the news. I was really surprised that things went that far, that people would be so upset and aggressive to attack a federal building was shocking, and I hope something like that doesn't ever happen again.
All right, and what about future guests? Yeah, we're probably going to have guests at some point. I think that's fair to say. But we just started. I mean, come on, this is our 11th episode. Like, give us a little time. We still want some time with us doing episodes before we have some guests. So, yeah, I think it'll happen at some point. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I like the idea of guests, and we've talked about ways in which we might do that and how those episodes might look, some ideas for people to come on or whatever. But I think that it's only fair to invite a guest once you have, like, a true idea of the show. Mm-hmm. So, like, to invite people to come on for the initial episodes would have looked a lot different because we're still creating this ourselves.
Yeah, it's too soon, but, we'll get there. We'll get there. Next question. Why make a podcast and not a YouTube channel instead? Well, to get into the technical weeds a little bit, I thought it would be easier to edit audio than it would be to edit video, and, didn't want to have to buy all kinds of camera equipment, and, we do these in my apartment, and so I don't really have, like, a studio, and there wouldn't be any sort of cool backdrop. It would, just be the two of us on a couch. So, it's easier to do a podcast.
Yeah, and I love listening to podcasts, so making one was really exciting. I think I must listen to countless numbers of podcasts every week. Mm-hmm. So I definitely know more about that media form than like a YouTube channel. I have not.
Yeah, that was part of it. Victoria is a podcast fiend, and so we're both leaning towards podcast.
Yeah.
Moving on, this is a little heavier. What are your views on the Uyghur genocide happening in China? Oh, it's bad. It's very bad. I would go so far as to say that China is the modern-day Nazi Germany. It's just not as well known yet. It's very bad. They literally have concentration camps over there. They're murdering, they're sterilizing these people. It's atrocious, and no one's doing anything about it. Oh no, we kind of didn't even protest the Olympics. Oh wow, thanks Biden, we're really doing it. No, nothing is happening. I don't know what it would take for someone to step in, but it's very bad.
It's heartbreaking. I'm upset that no action has happened yet. People are reporting on it, and other countries have spoken against it, but it doesn't seem like any impact has been made. Yeah. So that's what I'm really looking for, and I think we all agree is that this can't continue. and there needs to be some kind of plan to stop it, because I feel like China's a little untouchable in too many ways. People rely on them for trade, and we need to stop it.
On to another sort of heavy question. Do you think climate change is the biggest threat to humanity right now? It's a threat. Do I think it's the biggest threat to humanity right now? Not exactly. It's going to be a problem for the next generation and the generation after that. And it now is past time to start working on it, but there's a lot of problems happening that need our focus. Like, we still got to get through COVID. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's hard to focus on 50 to 100 years in the future when we're struggling to get through the past two. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's not a problem. We definitely need to work on it. Go nuclear energy. Like, we need some of that going forward, but there's just too many things we have to work on in the here and now. What do you think, V?
It's a huge problem. I think that it's a threat to humanity long term. And in the present time, natural disasters are worse than they've ever been, right, in recent history. It's a huge concern with hurricanes and fires and floods. We definitely need to be making urgent action and big changes. I'm not talking about let's ban straws, like make huge changes and make them where it's going to count most in corporations and the way the businesses are running, and encouraging other options. I think I'm a huge supporter of that.
You heard it here, folks. Victoria loves straws.
The paper straws are really frustrating.
They're bad. They're so bad.
They just collapse in your drink after a while. I don't really think that's going to save the world. We need to be making some bigger steps.
I agree. Next up, what are your thoughts on all these vaccine mandates, including federal mandates and private companies mandating it? I don't love federal mandates. Biden's recent mandate for companies over 100 employees require vaccines or mandatory testing. I don't like that. That seems like an overreach to me. I have no problems with individual companies mandating it. That's fine. I have no problem with that at all. It's the government getting involved with that I don't love, personally.
Vaccine mandates aren't new, right? We all have to get a certain amount of vaccines before you start school, before you go to college. All of that is mandatory. So I think that having some form of organized obligation to have a fair amount of precaution involved around the pandemic is important. We need to be doing what we can to end it. I understand that there are health reasons people are concerned about getting the vaccine, and definitely believe in researching and understanding your risks and making an educated choice. So for that reason, I think there should be a little bit of flexibility where mandates are, because people's health is a very private thing. But overall, I think vaccine mandates to fly internationally, I'm all for that kind of stuff.
Moving on, I feel like a lot of people politically identify themselves as independent and often vote Democrat or Republican based on what they think this country needs at the time. Do you think that they are all truly independent, or do a majority of them just lean to either side and will often vote the same every time? Yeah, I think there's a shrinking portion of the country that is truly independent, and it's kind of like a New Hampshire thing to be a registered independent and then vote one side or the other for each election. That's like a super New Hampshire thing. I don't think that's really common in the rest of the country. So I don't know if it's a majority, especially these days. People are getting so much more divisive. And I don't know if I mean, personally, I think the independent party is shrinking and has shrunk to the smallest it's ever been, honestly. I really do think people have picked sides and will stick to those sides.
I agree. I do think that's the trend, that people are more divisive these days and more rooted in their party lines. But I'm not against people registering independent so that they can have some flexibility and vote for who they believe is a good representative instead of just who their party is promoting. Mm-hmm. So yes, that is something that people do, but I kind of love that idea because we need to be working across party lines. That's what we should be getting better at.
Yeah, that's why we made this podcast, right?
Like, that's kind of the whole idea.
That's the idea behind it. All right, last question. If you had to pick 2 broad topics that plague our country the most, what are they? This is tough. There's a lot of problems. Everyone's got problems, right? It's hard not to say COVID. It's, we got to get through this. We got to get through this. Everyone's tired of it. And people are dying hand over fist. It's crazy. We're never going to get back to where we were until COVID's taken care of. So that's got to be number 1 for me. Potentially number 2 would be politicians are very old. They're very old. We're being ruled, essentially. The people who are making the laws are so old that these laws are not going to affect them. These are the career politicians like Joe Biden, who has been in office longer than I've been alive and since my parents were children. And so, like, we need term limits. And just like how we have an age minimum for being elected to office, maybe we should have an age maximum. I mean, these people need to retire, sincerely.
This is a big question. I agree that right now, the thing that is affecting every corner of our lives is COVID, and we really need to get through this truly difficult time. It's affecting absolutely every issue. And so, yeah, it's hard not to say COVID. I would say that's the first one. I think I'm going to go kind of broad with the second issue and just say inequality as like a broad spectrum. You know, racial inequality, income inequality. We are just, so many people are struggling or not being treated fairly or not given equal rights. And that has been such a long-term issue in our nation's history that we need to make huge changes to just get to where we should be these days. Like, it's going to be 2022 and issues that have been going on since the beginning of our country are still happening. Like, that's just ridiculous.
Well, that was our Q&A episode to celebrate getting to 10. I want to thank everyone who sent in questions. We didn't answer all of them, unfortunately, so I'm sorry if you sent some in and you didn't hear it. We are probably going to do another one. I think this was fun.
It was really fun, guys. Thanks so much for your questions.
Yeah, this has been great. We're probably going to do another one in the future. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And we're taking a break for the holidays, but we will see you again in the new year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.